The wind off the harbor carried the familiar scent of salt and diesel as the ferry eased into the docks of Port Charles. For most passengers, the town was simply another stop along the New York coastline. For Ethan Lovett, it was unfinished business. He stepped off the ferry with a single duffel bag slung over his shoulder. The harbor lights flickered against the water, and the outline of the haunted star floated quietly nearby, the casino ship where his life had changed forever. Funny, Ethan muttered to himself with a crooked grin. Some places never really let you leave. 6 years. 6 years since he'd last walked these streets. 6 years since he'd sworn he was done with Port Charles for good. Yet here he was again, the ghost of Luke Spencer. Ethan walked down the pier, his boots echoing softly against the wood. His eyes drifted toward the haunted star. Once, that ship belonged to his father, Luke Spencer, the man who had been both a stranger and the closest thing Ethan ever had to family. The news of Luke's death months earlier had shaken him more than he expected. Even after years apart, Ethan had always believed his father was out there somewhere, scheming, hustling, cheating death. Luke Spencer wasn't supposed to die. Yet here they were. Ethan reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a silver coin. Luke had given it to him years ago during one of their late-night poker games. "A lucky coin," Luke had said with a grin. "Every con man needs one." Ethan flipped it once in the air and caught it. "Guess I'm going to need the luck now, old man." Kelly's Diner. Morning light spilled through the windows of Kelly's Diner. Inside, the familiar smell of coffee and pancakes filled the room. Regulars chatted in booths, and the clatter of dishes created the comforting chaos that defined the place. Ethan stepped inside. For a moment, nobody noticed him. Then the waitress behind the counter froze. "Ethan?" Ethan turned toward the voice. There stood Lulu Spencer. Her blonde hair framed her face, and her eyes widened in disbelief. "Well, I'll be," Ethan said softly. "You're awake." Lulu crossed the diner in seconds and threw her arms around him. "You jerk," she said, laughing and crying at the same time. "You disappear for years and just show up like nothing happened?" Ethan hugged her tightly. "I figured dramatic entrances run in the family." She pulled back and looked him over. "You look older. That's what time does." "And Australia?" "Still sunny," Ethan said. "Still full of trouble." Lulu smirked. "Then you'll fit right back in here." Trouble returns. Word traveled quickly in Port Charles. By the afternoon, half the town knew Ethan Lovett was back. And not everyone was happy about it. Across town, inside the dark office of Winmere's mainland estate, a man read the news on his tablet. The Cassadine family had long memories. "Ethan Lovett," the man murmured. "Back in town." He closed the tablet slowly. "Interesting. A drink at Charlie's." That evening, Ethan sat at the bar in Charlie's pub. The place buzzed with conversation. Music played softly in the background. Ethan swirled a glass of whiskey. For the first time since arriving, the weight of the town settled over him. So many memories. So many mistakes. The stool beside him scraped across the floor. "Mind if I join you?" Ethan glanced up. Lucky Spencer stood beside him. Ethan blinked once. "Well," Ethan said slowly, "look what the cat dragged in." Lucky smiled faintly. "Yeah. Lulu said you were back." They stared at each other for a moment before Ethan stood and pulled him into a quick hug. "Good to see you, mate." Lucky sat down. "Same." The bartender slid Lucky a beer. "So," Lucky said, "what brings you back?" Ethan shrugged. "Family." Lucky raised an eyebrow. "That's a new one." Ethan took a sip of whiskey. Luke's gone. Lucky nodded quietly. Yeah. Silence stretched between them. He would have loved this, Ethan said eventually. His son sitting in a bar talking about him. Lucky smirked. He'd probably cheat us at poker afterward. Definitely. A dangerous message. Later that night, Ethan walked through the quiet streets toward the pier. The town had grown quieter since midnight. He stopped when he reached the docks. Something felt off. A shadow moved behind him. Lovely night for a stroll, a voice said. Ethan turned. Two men stepped from the darkness. Not locals. Not friendly. You, Ethan Lovett? One asked. Ethan sighed. Depends who's asking. The man smirked. Let's just say someone remembers you. Ethan's eyes narrowed. Cassidy's? Neither man answered. Instead, one reached for him. Ethan moved first. Luke Spencer's son had learned a few tricks over the years. Within seconds, the fight exploded across the dock. Punches, grunts, wood splintering under their feet. Ethan ducked a swing and drove his elbow into one man's ribs. The second lunged forward, and Ethan shoved him straight into the harbor. Splash! The other man scrambled back to his feet, clutching his side. This isn't over, he hissed. Ethan wiped blood from his lip. It never is in this town. The man ran. Ethan stood alone on the dock again, breathing hard. He stared at the dark water. Guess the welcome party started. Lulu's warning. The next morning, Lulu burst into the Metro Court Lounge where Ethan sat eating breakfast. You fought someone last night? Ethan didn't look up from his pancakes. Word travels fast. Lucky told me. Ethan sighed. Relax. I handled it. Lulu sat across from him. You can't just start trouble again, Ethan. I didn't start it. Cassidy's? Ethan shrugged. Probably. Lulu rubbed her temples. Of course it's the Cassidy's. Look, Ethan said gently. I didn't come here to cause problems. Lulu leaned forward. Then why did you come? Ethan hesitated. For the first time, the playful confidence left his face. I think Luke left something behind, he said quietly. What? A secret. Luke's legacy. That evening, Ethan and Lucky stood inside the old office aboard the Haunted Star. Dust covered the furniture. Luke's desk sat exactly where it always had. Ethan opened the drawer slowly. Inside lay a stack of poker chips, a flask, and an envelope. Lucky frowned. You've been here before. Yeah, Ethan admitted. But I didn't open this. He picked up the envelope. Luke's handwriting stared back at him. To Ethan. Lucky leaned closer. Well, Ethan broke the seal. Thunder rolled across the sky above Port Charles, rattling the windows of the old office aboard the Haunted Star. The storm outside matched the tension inside. Ethan Lovett stood by the window, staring out at the harbor. In his hand was the letter his father had left behind. Lucky Spencer leaned against the desk, reading it again. I still can't believe this, Lucky said quietly. Ethan gave a crooked smile. You and me both. The letter was short. Typical Luke Spencer fashion. If you're reading this, it means the game has already started. Somewhere in Port Charles is a fortune that doesn't belong to the Cassidy's anymore. I stole it fair and square, but they'll never stop looking for it. So if you want it, kid, you'll have to outsmart them. Luke. Lucky folded the letter carefully. So Dad stole from the Cassidy's, he said. Ethan raised an eyebrow. When did that ever surprise anyone? Lucky chuckled slightly. Good point. But the real question, Ethan said, tapping the letter, is what exactly he stole. Lucky frowned. And where he hid it. Lightning flashed across the harbor. Ethan smiled slowly. Well, looks like we've got ourselves a treasure hunt. Someone is watching. Across town, in a quiet suite at the Metro Court, a woman stood near the window overlooking Port Charles. She wore black, elegant and sharp. Her eyes were cold. On the table beside her sat a photograph of Ethan Lovett taken earlier that day. "So," she said softly, "Luke Spencer's son is back." A man entered the room. "They fought off 2 of our men last night." She smirked. "Just like his father." "Should we eliminate him?" The woman shook her head.
"No."
She picked up the photograph. "He may lead us directly to what Luke stole." Her eyes gleamed. "Let him play." The first clue. Morning arrived gray and damp after the storm. At Kelly's diner, Ethan, Lucky, and Lulu crowded around a booth. Lulu read Luke's letter for the 3rd time. "This is insane," she said. "That's Luke for you," Ethan replied. Lucky sipped his coffee. "Dad says the fortune is somewhere in Port Charles." "But that